Let's move on to the next team. Got the Syracuse Sparrows. Came in with a lot of money, and they spent a lot of that money on Dame Dollar. Bringing it to Syracuse. Also signed Tyus Jones. Made the trade with Van City for Shangoon, and then had a lot of draft equity that they used on Anthony Black, Kassan Wallace. Recently signed Isaac off the waiver wire. So Evan Mobley, one of those guys that has bounced around the league and now on Van City. Um, really, really bad loss in Lonzo Ball to injury. Really sad to see what's going on with him because I really wanted to see him kind of get his footing in Chicago and do his thing. But and then RW3, this guy has bounced around literally everywhere. And he's gotten some crazy returns for Robert Williams. Or I don't know if he got specifically, but I sent him out for Bane. Then Speedy sent him to Syracuse for Evan Mobley, and now he's like, I don't know where he is. He's clearly bounced around the league now, but um, what do you think about this offseason? Where do you see them falling in the standings of this conference? You can start, Kyle.
So I am not a fan of what Sparrows did. It's kind of just a cluster and hard to follow. Um, but at the end of the day, I mean, it is a team that's got, two top fantasy players in Damian Lillard and Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard looks like, he's going to play as many games as he physically can possibly. Um, and then, they've got up and coming stars in Jalen Green and Sengun. Although, Houston brought in a lot of veteran players as well as a veteran coach, and they want to win. So, it's kind of going to be interesting to figure out kind of what their role is going to be moving on forth with the Rockets. I'm pretty bullish on Matt Methuen or Matherin. Bethune. Matherin.
He's a
Um,
Toronto guy, right? He's a Toronto guy, right?
Montreal. Yeah, he's Canadian. Ex-Benny, baby.
Hmm.
Yeah.
yeah. He can really ball. The Pacers move with pace. He's moving into his second year. Um, and I just think that he's going to be able to take his game to that next level. I mean, anytime I see Jonathan Isaac in your starting lineup, I discount you probably at least 100%, just because I mean this guy is a book writer, a poet. Like this guy is not going to be playing on the basketball court. So certainly, they've got some young players, and maybe in a couple of years, they can make some noise. But I don't know if Sparrows has the patience, man. I've seen this story, this movie way too frequently with him, and so I'm just really curious about how this is going to really play out. And so if I had to rank 1 through 8, looking at some of the other teams, and I know they want to move Damian Lillard and Kawhi Leonard, ceiling of like sixth in the division, probably finish about seventh.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, you got Dame Lillard, Kawhi, Tyus Jones, and then young guys like uh, Jalen Green, Benedict, and Shangoon. I like Nemhard a lot. I think he's solid. I don't know if he's like a starter in this league per se, but and then Jonathan Isaac being in the starting lineup is gonna probably hurt a little bit. So yeah, I think they've got some moves to make, but yeah, I think you're probably right. If he's probably in that lower end. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I agree. I have him on the lower end. I have him eighth, unfortunately. I mean, you look at the team, it's very, very guard centric. Like it's arguably a big man punt almost, especially since Şengün actually, gets you some pretty decent steals and some good assists from the big. But
Mhm.
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I think there's only one center on that squad, um, in Yahoo leagues, and that's Şengün. So looking at it, definitely looks like a big man punt. Um, but even as a big man punt, I mean, you're going to be struggling with field goal. Look at Jalen Green, depending on how hot or cold you feel about Jalen Green. I'm sure he'll have a better season this year than last year with Fred VanVleet getting him the ball a little bit more. Um,
Mhm.
but that him and Benedict are two guys that I'm looking at thinking, okay, that the team is not going to sink or swim depending on how those guys perform. But if those guys hit, I mean, this looks like a way more potent small ball lineup. But like Cam said, or Kyle said, I mean, he's probably looking to move Lillard and Kawhi, and in this league, it's probably going to be hard because you move those guys. I mean, you're probably going to get back at least a couple assets, which means you're dropping assets that you already have. So any team with three rookies in this league in Black, Wallace, and Buffkin, it's gonna struggle. It's gonna struggle, I think.
This team looks like Dame before he axed out of Portland. Like, like I feel like Dame is like requested to go to a team. Is it your team, Dame? Is
Yeah,
Dame requesting to
Dame
only
did
play
not.
for Gotham?
Dame did not ask for this. He did not
this
ask for
is
this.
this is
But you
just
know what?
This
wrong.
is
Like,
not what he had in mind.
what's weird though, like this, he could use. I mean, I know he was talking about moving Lillard or Kawhi, but he could move any one of the young guys. He's got so many of them for a really good big. Like, there's no reason why he
Yeah.
couldn't package Matherin and I don't know Black or Wallace for a guy that's going to get you 8, 9 boards and be in their mid 20s. I mean,
Yeah, I
so he could
agree.
go either way, really.
I agree. I
Yeah, I
agree.
agree. And that's actually the position that Syracuse has been in for the last few years, where they could go up or they can go down. And um, I just maybe there's just not the lack of ability to find the right deal, or maybe some of those, as you mentioned, some of those guys not really hitting in the right time. So Jalen Green kind of struggled last year, and Benedict looked, he did some good things, but still probably has a question mark on him as well. Probably more in the same lane as Jalen Green right now. So Nemhard looks good, and Anthony Black, we'll see where he takes it. But I like Wallace. So I think there's room definitely for some consolidation and to get a bigger name to play with Dame and Kawhi and Tyus Jones. So they've got some veteran presence that they can build around if they want to do that. So it's not all gloom and doom in Syracuse. But yeah, for now, that's probably a fair assessment for them. So let's move on to the next team.
If I'll just add, if only there was a team out there that had like 6 centers
I
that
know.
he
I
could
know.
package, 3 or 2 of those
Mm,
young studs.
if only.
You
Uh,
know.
I think
There
we're
is a
gonna come
team that's
across one
always
actually
listening.
soon. I think we're gonna come across one soon, actually. So let's talk about King's Landing. Uh, they didn't have much money, but also didn't have a lot of roster spots to fill. So, um, they brought in Obi Toppin and drafted Grady Dick, who's playing for the Toronto Raptors, and then signed Oubre. So, they didn't lose much. Brooks, Levert, and Barnes. I don't know. I almost feel like Barnes was better to have than Oubre, but I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter. But here's the projected lineup. What do you what do you make of this, Skilla?
Um, this is a tough spot. I mean, I really like Shea. I like the individual pieces. Um, there's really some talent from the top down. Um, one of the challenges I see in evaluating this team is You've got a lot of different things going on from a percentage standpoint. Like, people love Kyle Kuzma. I don't know why, but like that guy, man, he just kills your percentages, and he's like widely varying with his field goal and free throw percentage. I mean, he gets popcorn stats, right? You can think about like rebounds and he'll chip in some assists, but I think he's a little bit overrated. Julius Randle's a guy I really do love, mainly because um, he gets points, rebounds, some assists, and he gets like volume threes. But another challenge there, right, is the percentages, right? Julius will go 2 for 15 or 7 for 19, from the field, right? And so you've got to have the right players around him to really be able to compensate for that sort of volatility. I love Jeremy Grant, like he's a baller, right? But you always wonder, what's going to happen with with the Trailblazers. And then Bam's role is going to be as good as it's ever been, right? Dame did not come to Miami. There seems to be no plan for any big star to possibly come to that team. So maybe Bam Adebayo sees an uptick back in assist, like we once did. But I mean, you know, just overall, I think this team is like just really tough, and it's going to have a rough season. Um, um, it's exciting. Bradley Beal's in a new place, but he's like the third star. So, I mean, eight, probably a ceiling of six if everything goes right. But yeah, eight in the conference is where I've got this team.
Okay, so very bottom. Yeah, I echo what you say about some of the big questions for me are surrounding Bradley Beal's role. Obviously, he's not in that Washington role that where he was last year. So we expected. I mean, but he didn't have a great season last year either. Injuries and whatnot. So Julius, you mentioned always interesting because he can shoot you out of a game, but he has these weird stretches where he's just like insanely hot.
Mm-hmm.
Remember after 2 or 3 games last year, he just was like, baby Jokic for some reason. He was hot, man. He was hitting. I think he had a career high in threes last year, if I'm not mistaken. At least average wise. And then Grant's role this year is also interesting. With Dame out of the picture, they've got other guys who can clearly, you know, get shots up, but what role do you think Jeremy Grant is gonna roll? Like, it's not probably his Pistons role, but it's somewhere in between, maybe where he's been last year and when he was on the Pistons. I don't know. And then Shea, I think a lot of people are down on Shea this year, figuring that he won't repeat what he did last year. What are you thinking about, Alex? What do you see when you think about this team?
Um, yeah, I kind of see a lot of the popcorn stats. Like when three of your power forwards are negatives in field goal, you're gonna have a really tough time winning that category. Julius Randle, Kyle Kuzma, and Jeremy Grant, they're gonna shoot you out of that category, I think. I'm also looking at this team. I don't really see, with the exception of Shea and maybe Bam, I don't really see any steals or blocks. Certainly Norman Powell isn't the steal guy that he used to be. Um, Randall's not giving you anything in that. Beal's not giving you much in that. So those are three categories just like off the bat that I'm kind of thinking he'll be one of the worst teams in our division in those three cats. And then, threes, I mean, I don't think there's a single guard there that's a that's above the benchmark of like 2.14, 2.18, whatever it is for 3 pointers a game. Like Bradley Beal just barely cuts it at like 2.3 or whatever, but no one else there. So that's another category. So I really like Shea. I really like Bam. Even Bradley Beal, I like, despite him being in Phoenix. But I don't know. I see it being really good in points and really good in, or pretty good in rebounds and even good in assists with Randall and Beal and Shea. But it's the other stuff that's kind of a bit of a head scratcher for me.
So in other
So I
words,
have a
King's Landing is
follow.
going to sell a lot of tickets this year. They're going to put on a great show, but maybe not be very competitive. What did you want to ask, Kyle?
Yeah, I was curious, Alex, if you were GM of King's Landing, right? Theoretically, what type of moves would you look to make?
You can get rid of one of the power forwards that's net negative and field goal for you, whether that's Grant, Randall, or Kuzma. Try to shore that stat up and try to bring someone that contributes more in blocks. Because I think, I mean, I'd look at the projected standings on BBM, but I would wager that he's one of the worst in blocks. Yeah. I mean,
Like,
I'm
I feel like
curious.
anyone else feel like this was a setup question for a trade?
No.
No,
Different
certainly not.
timelines, different timelines. I have a question for
Certainly not.
both of you though.
Yeah.
So Shea is one of my favorite players. I think he's phenomenal. Do you guys think that we're in for a regression year of Shea? Because I mean his free throw shooting was a career high by like 10 percentage points or something ridiculous. He's just shooting lights out. Do we think that Shea slides out of the top 10 this year, or do you think he stays?
Top 10 is like gonna be really hard for him to drop out of, mainly because I don't really see his field goal dropping below 50% unless he starts shooting threes at volume. And I don't think there's any reason to necessarily do that unless, you know, Chet is kind of taking away some of his lanes. But I mean, he scores so much from the mid range, so I don't think that'll be necessarily an issue. The free throw percentage, I mean, he'll be over 82%, at least. The big question I think I have is, at what value, right? Like he shot like a lot of free throws like last year. I feel like actually we had in another league, Alex, like we played in like a semifinal, and like he started off like 1 for 4. The next thing you know, or maybe it was even worse, like 2 for 6 or 2 for 7. Next thing you know, at the end of the game, he's 20 for 23. Like, right. And we're like in this heated, battle to figure out, who's gonna win the free throw percentage category. Um, and then he's got that Dwayne Wade, right? Like he's like one of the leaders from guards and blocks, and I don't see that going anywhere. Um, assists should still be there as well at 4 or 5 a game. Maybe it, goes down maybe a little by like, an assist, right? To maybe 4.5, 5-ish. But he should still be able to hit that mark because arguably he's got more players to deliver to. But I mean, Shea is just, I mean, I don't see it being exactly as like last season. Like it's going to be tough for him to match that, especially when you're bringing in somebody like Chet, because right, his efficiency numbers were already pretty high. So you're asking him to steal more, right? And he's already an elite steal artist, as well as a good blocker. Um, maybe if his turnovers go down or something, then maybe, he can figure out a way to kind of slide, or remain kind of in that top 5. So I think certainly in the top 10, but probably in the 5 to 10 range is my guess with Shea.
Yeah, I won't repeat too much of what you said, but I to answer the question, I don't see him dropping out of the top 10, and I think uh, even though he had some career highs last year and like his free throw shooting and his scoring, of course, but I, I mean, what I see from him is pretty much what I'm super high on Shea, and I think everything he did was like I was like, oh yeah, of course he can do that. Like that was sort of my reaction to his year. I was not really surprised by what he did, even though the Z scores are probably crazy for when looking at the trend of his career. Um, but uh, on the topic of forward, that you mentioned a lot about the forwards and sort of how they can kind of kill you in the field goal department. He did sign Obi Toppin, who's in a new role in Indiana. Do you think that Obi can possibly unseat one of these guys in his lineup?
No, I don't think so. I mean, if there was one, probably Aaron Gordon, just because Kuzma, Randall, and Grant are going to have so much usage. There's no way Obi's going to match that.
Yeah.
So just sheer volume. I don't see Toppin supplanting at least those three,
Hmm.
maybe Aaron Gordon. And even then, Aaron Gordon's going to get more minutes than Obi. I mean, I can hear O'Dean screaming like in the background, just being like, no, I will get points and dogs and rebounds, 7 boards a game, 20 points a game. Um, I don't know. I mean, it's like, is
Uh,
Obi Toppin going to play over 21 minutes a game? Like, what's the over under 21 and a half?
ooh,
Listen,
20.
I'll
I'll
be
take the over. I'll
watching.
take the over. I'll take the
You
over
take
on
the
21
over?
and a half.
They've got a
Yeah.
lot of they've got a lot of forwards in Indiana. They've got a lot
They
of
do.
guys who play forward, and they've got a rookie, Jarvis Walker, that looked pretty good in his first preseason game. So we'll see if Obi can hold on. You know that defense has been an issue in the past, and um, I assume I assume is it Carlisle? Carlisle
Yeah,
is
Carlisle.
Indiana, right? I assume he's gonna want to see some defense from that position. So Obi's gonna have to really step it up to kind of stay on the floor. He's gonna have to defend to stay on the floor. I think what he's gonna do offensively is, I don't have any concerns about that. The usage won't be there, like you said, but um, I'm curious to see what he does, man. He's got the opportunity now. So
He'll
how are you?
finally
Even,
have, the paint, right? He won't have to like worry about Mitch Robinson like clogging up the paint, right? So that's
mhm.
going
Yeah,
to be huge because
that's
Miles
huge.
Turner is pretty much kind of around the perimeter for a lot of that offense, and Halliburton is one of the best floor generals in the
Yeah.
NBA right now.
The real life fit is amazing. Like I'm super excited to watch. Indiana's like a league pass team. All the alley oops and the
Yes.
fast breaks are just gonna run. The real
Yeah.
life fit's amazing. And selfishly, I hope Obi Toppin does succeed because I have him in another league. But again, it's redundancy. Like you look at Obi Toppin, you compare him to Randall, Kuzma, and Grant, and it's still like Obi Toppin's per 36 minutes. He's still getting less than a steal and less than half a block a game. So
Ouch.
even if you take Toppin into that starting lineup and take out one of the forwards, you're not really fixing two of your huge glaring holes.
Well said. Let's move on to the next team. And we are here with the Speedsters. Again, we went over the trade, so he acquired Jalen Duran. But very active team, very active every season, really. And this is a team that you'll come to learn that perennial team flipper. Okay. So take a picture of what the team looks like now, because you may not see them again in by the middle of the season. All right. So um
Yeah, Speedsters does not
no.
own a permanent marker. He definitely uses like
Yo,
a number two
when you
pencil.
move to Amherst, just you are there to rent and don't even unpack your bags. You don't know what. Look at what happened with Jalen. Poor Jabari Smith. Didn't even didn't even start a game yet. Already sent packing. Like it's real. So they signed James Harden. Made a trade for Cade. So Brooklyn, that's a trade that you did with you. We'll get back to that for now, but what do you think about this offseason and what do you think about the lineup?
Um, I think Amherst Speedsters did really well. It was clear to me that they didn't want to run back, the team from last year because they were going to be a tax team. There was a lot of pressure. They failed last year. They kind of did the super team build. This was like the second, version of it per se. And I mean, it's just been unsuccessful for it. So I think what the vision was to try to get some young, valuable talent, um, and try to, you know, kind of tune the roster as needed, to give it an opportunity to compete for like a championship or to contend. So I I I I like the accumulation of all the moves that the team did. Personally, I probably would have doubled down on the team that he had last year and kind of played within the margins there. But,
Mhm.
I can't argue against this strategy where it kind of gives you, a couple of years, right? So he doesn't have the pressure of having to win, this year. He can win this year or next year, maybe 2 years, maybe a trade opens up, right? That's just perfect for his team. And he can kind of,
A
put
trade
together a
always
couple of
opens
his
up for
pieces. Yeah, that's true.
a trade will always open up for
That
him.
is, yeah.
He finds a way, makes a way. I mean, really, when you look at the names that are no longer on the team, it's it's crazy to think that you can have a successful offseason when you don't have Jokic, Curry, Anthony Davis, LaMelo Ball, and Evan Mobley on your team anymore. By any standards, anyone that's a failure for any other team. But somehow they've come out of this. I think BBM and even Yahoo has ranked them as the number one team coming out of free agency. So, um, really, really, really impressive. What did you think, Alex?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, like you said, the key subtractions look and go, oh my goodness, like why? But the
Yeah,
dollar sign isn't next to those player names, so it's
right.
hard um to put yourself in those shoes and say, yeah, do I want to pay the extra money? I think he did a really, really great job. If you look at the names and he somehow managed to straddle the line between like I'm competitive now, and I think this is a top two team in our division behind
Mhm.
only Rucker. So he somehow managed to be competitive, but look at the names. I mean, Maxey, Cunningham, Jaron Jackson Jr., even Gafford. These are all young. I mean, like all these guys are young. All these guys are young, with the exception of Paul and Harden. So, um,
Right.
yeah, and they're contributing now too. It's not like it's just some prospect. I mean, Cade's going to
Right.
be maybe a third round talent. Maxi could maybe be a third round talent too, depending on the Harden situation. So he's really deep. I don't think his top eight is the best. I think that goes to Rucker, but
Mhm.
he's really deep, really young, and yeah, I like what he did.
Yeah, agreed. And so now the big question surrounding this team, I think, lies around James Harden. You know what's going on in Philly right now. Are any of you hesitant to draft him in your redrafts because of what's going on, or do you
Oh,
think it's just kind of
I,
also?
as a Brooklyn Nets fan, when James Harden didn't hustle, um, for that loose ball, like I wish I could play the video, that clip of that. Like it's all over, like the internet. If you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. James Harden is a quitter. James Harden is a quitter. He's a guy that I personally basically do not draft. Like he's just a person you can't trust. I think his better years are unfortunately behind him. And he now is at a point where he breaks down. Like he is liable to be out for at least a month nowadays. Um, and right, like he's got so much to prove also from a playoff perspective. Like nobody cares about what James Harden does in the regular season anymore. Like people just want to see what he does in the playoffs. And he probably understands that and knows that. That's how he's going to get his next big payday. Um, so I am like really like
You're off.
low on James Harden. Like, I mean, it's basically do not draft territory, right? Like I'm choosing people like Jalen Brunson above James Harden, like not even blinking.
Whoa, you're not even a
Well,
Nick fan. Whoa.
yep, yep. So,
Best point
I
guard in New
just,
York.
yeah, you got that one.
All right. What
But
do you
Ben
think,
is
Alex?
back again. Ben is back. Tell your
Dane, if
friends.
Harden's there for you in like the late second, are you taking him?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, I am.
I think I
So
am too.
so you guys are willing to quit on your team, right? Like so you're willing to put that product, James Harden, in a fat suit in
I
front of your
look,
fans.
I preface that with saying that I wouldn't necessarily want to take him, but at that point I feel like I might have to. And
Yeah,
it depends on also what my first pick was too. Like if I feel like he would fit my build, I mean I wouldn't hesitate at that point in the draft. Like I would
Well,
prefer him in third, but you know, I don't that's
let me
not
give some
necessarily
names. Cade Cunningham or James Harden.
James Harden.
Harden. Not
All right.
dynasty, mind you, right? Obviously, this is redraft.
Yeah,
It's
just
redraft. Yeah,
redraft.
certainly
Harden.
redraft. Certainly redraft. Yeah, it's not
Harden.
fair.
Yeah.
Redraft. Okay. Paul George,
Harden.
Jimmy Butler,
Jimmy.
Oof. Uh, I-
Timmy.
It does depend on who you take first round, though,
it
for
depends
sure.
on who you take first round for me.
But in a vacuum, I'll say Jimmy.
Kawhi
Yeah,
Because
Leonard.
Harden,
I have to say Jimmy. Yeah, that's fair. I trust Jimmy more than I do James Harden, and trust means a lot to me. So that's kind of where I felt that way. And Tyrese Maxey, that's a nice cover up for if James Harden is not around. Um, and Jaren Jackson Jr. You've touched a lot on him already when speaking about him, you know, when you made the trade. But he looked pretty good in his first preseason game. He took a lot of flack for his USA um World Cup performance. I I don't know. I don't know how I feel about JJJ. Like he's one of those guys who like I feel like he just does not perform the way I would want him to perform on my team. Like he's just it's great stats, but
I mean, the one positive,
oh
he's super
I don't
young, right? Like he's super
yeah.
young. I think we've seen some increase, right, in his points and his ability to score.
Do you
Um,
think this team is going to struggle
but
with
like
rebounding?
he rebounding this team. Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, when you've got Jaren Jackson Jr. at center, your team is 9 times out of 10 going to struggle at center. This guy is like allergic to rebounds. Like, you know,
I will say though, let's not forget this guy. Those are the projected stars. I mean, this guy also has Fultz, who's a positive rebounder at the guard position, and Onyeka. Like Onyeka, I mean, he could be a top 50 guy if Capella gets moved, potentially,
And,
maybe, right?
is
and let's
Odin
not
in your ear?
No, no. I
and
just looked at his team right now on Yahoo. I'm like,
yeah.
oh my god, he's got Onyeka. Like, you're stacked when Onyeka doesn't make the
Onyeka.
projected starters.
And let's not also forget that he just traded for a rebounding machine in Jalen Duran. So,
True. Yeah.
That's
so
fair.
there's also some room there. Chris Paul may be out of this lineup. I don't know yet. I think he's probably got enough guard power to to do without CP3 in this lineup. But we'll see. We'll see what Speedy ends up going.